Because if you are working through carrier lists serially, one call at a time, one carrier at a time. Hey, can you take this load? No. Okay, bye. Hey, can you take this load? No. Okay, bye. Hey, can you take this load? Yes. Awesome. Oh man, your MC number is looking a little new there, buddy. I can't work with you. Bye. So, doing that is it's difficult to scale that. It's not difficult. It's impossible to scale that. Yeah. And then you look at if market's starting to tighten, whatever, different brokers are experiencing different things right now. If you are starting to be in a situation where you have more freight than you know how to cover with your team, your only lever to start doing that, to start scaling that, is to hire more people.
Before we dive into today's episode, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Sales-CRM. They are one of the only CRMs built specifically for freight brokers and freight agents. Not only can you manage your shipper sales prospecting, you can also manage your carriers and the lanes they run directly in the CRM. Check out sales-crm.com, and thanks again for the sponsorship. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Welcome back to the ThinkFreight Podcast. Thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Thomas Werdine, and it's my pleasure. I've got my friend, Jesse Taylor. He's the Partner Marketing Manager at Parade. Jesse, welcome back to the pod, man.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me back. It was great conversation last time, and always good to have another conversation here.
Heck yeah, man. Last time I had you here, we talked about pallets and a bunch of, different options there. But I want to talk about what you're doing now, because you're back at Parade. So I want to, kind of give everyone a quick refresher on kind of who the heck you are. What led you to maybe rejoin Parade and what you're doing there right now.
Yeah. So, I never stop thinking about this industry. I mean, I think everybody that's probably listening can probably relate, thinking about freight all the time. Like, sometimes you'd like it to stop in your brain, but it doesn't. So I think that I just had a lot of unfinished business here with freight brokers, and enabling them to just be better at sourcing capacity, reutilizing carriers, growing efficiently, all sorts of stuff. And happy to get into kind of the details there at any point. But really, I've always been excited about this. So I've been back for about 9 months now at Parade, and was in a sales capacity role. And I was really excited this past month to move into a marketing management role where, I'm really focused on enabling our partners and enabling our broker customers to work with their TMS that we integrate with, and also with the Parade platform that's doing a lot of different things. But, all of that is none of it is possible without the critical data in TMS and that workflow happening back and forth. So we're really doubling down on, hey, this is an ecosystem play. We need to work closely with our partners and enable our partners to understand, hey, here's where this partnership is valuable for their broker customers. So that's kind of one of the big things that I'm doing here.
No, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you're back with Parade. I can definitely understand like that feeling of having kind of that unfinished business and wanting to kind of go back and tackle that challenge. I kind of had that same feeling when I got out of freight brokerage the first time. I kind of just had that feeling. I knew I wanted to stay in logistics when I left TQL, but I had to wait out my non-compete. And then after that, kind of, I just was so wanting to get back into brokering. I just felt like I had a lot of unfinished business, and my time wasn't done yet. So I can definitely relate to you there, man. 30,000 foot view for people who might not be familiar. What is Parade, and what are you guys trying to solve in the freight space?
Yeah, so Parade is a platform that integrates with full truckload freight brokerage TMS, and pulls out a lot of great data from there, but also enriches that data. So there are kind of a few main things that this platform is doing. The first is it comes down to booking more freight per person. And one big way of doing that is cutting down on the manual routine tasks. Brokers are getting emails all day from carriers saying, can I have these load details? Is that load still available? I mean, any broker, if they're looking at their email right now, that's just what it's full of. And you're not getting back to all of those carriers. And if you are, you're going with the first carrier that makes sense. Yeah. And so that first thing is just cutting down on those manual tasks. As a carrier moves through the carrier sales funnel, you could call it, there are other tasks that can start to be, we can start to apply a layer of intelligence on automation for. So that really repeat freight that you're using the same carriers all the time, those are great candidates for digital booking and just not spending time on the transactions. It really just comes down to working the carrier and not working the load. Because if you can work the carrier and look at that carrier holistically for everything that carrier can do together with you as a synergistic relationship, to not try to use too many buzzwords, we want to make sure that, hey, I as a broker, I'm not just worried about getting loads off the board. I want to think strategically about my work and not get muddled up in those emails. So there's a bunch of different types of automation and intelligence from the very top of the carrier sales funnel, that first email in, all the way till you own all of that carrier's capacity, basically, and it's just sending the rate con and every step in between.
No, I love that, because something I'm big on, Jesse, and I know you and I have kind of talked about this ad nauseum, is I'm big on relationships. When I was a broker, I was very big on some of those relationship, driving my freight. I wasn't always looking for the cheapest option or the option that was going to be a one and done. I was always kind of looking for, hey, can you move this efficiently for me on a daily basis, weekly basis, whatever the load, schedule may be. And also, how can I tap into additional capacity on different lanes we have, or on different lanes, from this same shipper or whatever it may be. So I love that you guys are kind of doing that from that perspective and helping, kind of take care of some of those workflows that brokers tend to really get in the weeds with, because it can be, when you get 40 or 50 emails on one lane, it can be kind of overwhelming to see your inbox explode like that. And yeah, it's a fun but weird process.
And it's like, is that the right carrier that I put on that load? There were 50 options,
right?
It can be impossible to tell that stuff. And to your point about relationships, absolutely, relationships are critical. I think that as the market tightens, you start to hear brokers start talking more about carrier relationships. Yeah. Now it's like, I always care a lot about relationships. It's not to doubt that they do, but now it's becoming more of a focus of
critical.
Yeah, we better treat our carriers well. And part of that is, knowing the guy's daughter is in volleyball. There's that kind of relationship part of it, of course. But then there's also being the very first broker to respond to their email. Yeah. Making sure that carrier sees the right load in the right place at the right time, wherever it is that they like to find work, at that right rate, and just make it really, really ridiculously easy for that carrier to book that load with you. And if you can do that repeatedly across all your carriers and most of your freight, that's when the brokerage starts humming, and that's where the relationships start to be really impactful. And that is something that we're most aligned with our customers on.
Yeah, I think that's, you make a good point, is when you have those relationships in place and you can just kind of basically auto tender these loads out to your carriers. It frees up the broker to go out there and win more freight, to go out there and prospect new business, to go out there and talk to their current relationships, their current shippers, and say, hey, how can we continue to penetrate and really focus on your needs a little bit better? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you are working through carrier lists serially, one call at a time, one carrier at a time. Hey, can you take this load? No. Okay, bye. Hey, can you take this load? No. Okay, bye. Hey, can you take this load? Yes. Awesome. Oh man, your MC number is looking a little new there, buddy. I can't work with you. Bye. So, doing that is it's difficult to scale that. It's not difficult. It's impossible to scale that. Yeah. And then you look at if market's starting to tighten, whatever, different brokers are experiencing different things right now. if you are starting to be in a situation where you have more freight than you know how to cover with your team, your only lever to start doing that, to start scaling that, is to hire more people.
Yeah.
And that's all well and good, but the next time that the market softens, brokerages have to start letting go of those people that they hired in the tight market, and you get these huge shifts in your headcount, and that can be very, very costly and hard to repeat, and just heart-wrenching also to keep having to hire and fire throughout these cycles too. We really want to help brokerages reduce how much they're doing that.
Yeah, and it can lead to having a negative kind of a culture, right? Like, hey, we know that if the market shifts, there's potential that we're going to lose 25% of our friends that work here, our colleagues that work here, or, you know, someone who may have a down quarter may end up getting fired when, you know, in a hot market, they may have had a little bit more leverage because they're also helping on, you know, covering some other freight and things like that. So, you know, sometimes they have a little bit more of that flexibility to be able to say, hey, like, we don't have to do this now. But when the market softens and you're spending a lot of money on headcount, when you're losing freight and losing margin percentage, it's tough to justify keeping those people on board, unfortunately. Jesse, I want to you know, kind of talk about, because we're talking about the market shifts, and as the brokerage, or as the market inevitably shifts, you know, what should brokers be doing right now to start preparing for that shift?
Yeah, so there are a lot of different things there, right? And I think that for the last 2 years, a subset of brokers has been thinking very long term about how do we prepare for the next tight market. I would say that maybe, this is just a ballpark, maybe 5% of brokerages have been really thinking proactively about the next 2 years. I mean, they're thinking about it, but there's a difference between thinking and making moves. I don't want to paint with too broad of strokes because I'm going to piss some people off. But I think that right now, nobody knows exactly when that market's going to shift. It's going to happen sometime eventually. I think it's really getting those systems in place to make sure that your team is very well trained. I think investing in training right now is going to be really critical. Yeah. For example, like, and I know you were talking to Nick Dangles on your last episode, and he's also thinking about this stuff too, where it's like, most brokerages, well, I don't know, most folks who did a lot of hiring over the last couple of years, they have, I think a lot of carrier-facing sales reps have learned some bad habits and haven't really gone through a period where it's difficult to cover freight. You could just post a load. You're going to get that flood of emails. Everything's going to get covered. Your rates are kind of the thing you got to work on, maybe, but actually covering freight has not been a painful experience. But now we're going to be in a position where it'll start getting a little bit more difficult as the market tightens, and that's where, you know, we want to see brokerages making sure that their team is well prepared to do that. And I think that looking at sort of ways to manage your capacity and understand, where is my density? How can I scale my current operation at the current standards of service with my same method of covering freight? And those are kind of some important questions to ask. And if it comes down to, like, I need to be able to cover more freight with my existing team, with repeat carriers that are going to get me better service levels, are going to reduce my new carrier onboarding costs, all sorts of, and reduce my risk of fraud, of course. Yeah. If you can do all of those things better, you're way better equipped to handle that tight market.
I'm glad you touched on something. So I was talking to a head of a brokerage who said that they're extremely nervous for the market to shift, because a lot of their brokers, and it's just something that you touched on a second ago, was they've never experienced a tight market. They've never had those shifts where they've gone from a soft to a tougher market, where they're going to have to dig to actually find carriers for their freight. And, you know, we were talking a little bit about, you know, kind of some things that they can do to prepare. And it's just like, you know, you have to start training. You have to start, you know, looking at your team holistically and say, like, how are we actually covering our freight? How are we treating our carriers, and how can we improve? Because in 3 months the market could shift, in 6 months the market could shift. It could be another 2 years before the market shift, but inevitably that market will shift, and these teams do need to be prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like there's also, we're in this kind of in between place, in between spot where, earlier when I mentioned, hey, like maybe 5% of the brokers are actually really making decisions and thinking about that long term. I think that the reason for that is most brokerages have been bleeding for a couple of years. Yeah. Like you can't think about the 2 years from now when your right now is on fire. Yeah. So I think that, we might be getting to that in between spot where like maybe things aren't so much on fire for some. It varies by by brokerage, but now it's that spot where it's like, okay, maybe things aren't quite on fire. Now is where I lay my groundwork, do these things. Part of that could be looking at your technology strategy. Part of that could be looking at your training, but just looking holistically at how do I diagnose my specific problems that I think are going to cause much bigger costs throughout this market and make me lose money, and go and find solutions to those specific problems. And especially don't go look at solutions without a problem in mind. I'm talking about AI there, because like anybody who's like, I need to do AI, I don't know what to do with it. It's like, I think that's moving in the wrong direction. It's like,
right.
You want to start with the problem and see maybe AI could apply to this, not how do I paste AI onto my existing problem and hope it fits some of my problems. Yeah,
that seems to be kind of a growing trend as we see brokerages, carriers, whoever it may be, and this is just even in the common workplace outside of freight, is we're kind of just shoehorning AI into things that maybe don't necessarily need it, or it's just kind of dressing up a pig, because the problem is still kind of there. So yeah, I think that's interesting, and I think that we kind of need to, I think over the next year or two, we're going to kind of start to see maybe the AI buzz in freight kind of die off a little bit. I don't think it's going to completely go away, but I think some of that overall buzz and people aren't going to be as quick to jumping into, hey, we need an AI solution. We need an AI solution. I think they're going to look at it a little bit more cautiously and kind of see, hey, how can we really integrate this into our current needs so we're not integrating something too early or something that doesn't work, the way we actually need it to, or doesn't even address kind of some of those problems we're having anyway.
Yeah, it's got to address priority number one, like executive priority number one. Maybe you can put some AI into that as part of an overall strategy. It's never going to be add tools and stir and just hope something nice happens. It's always got to be part of a larger initiative. And whenever you do some kind of change, it has to be, hey, we're putting all of our effort into doing this. Because if you just flip a switch on a thing, it's not going to work. And that is really, that is another really critical takeaway there. With AI, I use AI all the time, but I'm not going to pretend like it can do my actual whole job for me. I hope not. Maybe someday.
Hey, listen, in the future, you never know what our robot overlords are going to be able to do, man. Take over your whole job.
Yeah, cool. As long as I own the robot.
Yeah, you'll just be an AI. You'll be like an AI agent, just kind of doing things, and you'll just yell from the couch or something what to do.
I'm going to go move to a farm. I'm going to get a cow. My wife said making your own mozzarella is apparently not that difficult. So I'm like, all right.
Hey, let's
try it.
I was actually telling my lady about that. We are a big mozzarella fans, so I was telling her we need to make some really soon because it's actually like very easy. Like it's stupid easy. At least that's what YouTube shows. Yeah, like ricotta. I don't know. We are big gardeners, so we've got a zucchini plantation. We have so much zucchini, so we do this thing where we wrap zucchini with ricotta. I don't know. Anyway, I'd like to just be able to focus on that stuff someday, but I think freight's always going to be there in the back of my mind, like you're always
weeding its
freight.
way in.
Always thinking freight, man. So let me ask you this, Jesse. So what kind of trends? I want to dive into some things for what kind of the broker insight side. What kind of trends are maybe you noticing from conversations that Parade is having with with your customers or with your prospects? And are there common themes in their challenges and in their needs right now?
Yeah, I think I touched on it slightly earlier. I think that some brokers are now getting into the, all right, I need to scale up, I need to hire kind of mode. We talked to a broker last week who's hiring 1 to 2 reps per week.
Wow.
It's like, okay, as you do that, how are you setting up the systems to make sure that each one counts? So I think it's just, hey, like we're right now seeing a situation where we're starting to see more freight than we can cover with our existing team, and now more folks are coming to talk to us to say, all right, how can Parade specifically help me to scale up my team with headcount being one lever to pull, but I need some other levers. Yeah. So we're just seeing more of that in the conversation. We're seeing fewer brokers who are coming to us saying, I'm bleeding. It's not to say that that's not happening at all, but it's definitely on the decline. So that's not data driven. That is totally anecdotal, but it is based on kind of our conversations that our team is having with brokerages. So those are a couple of the sort of the trends of just like, I think that the best brokerages are trying to be cognizant of when they hire in order to grow, how do they make every single head count and plan ahead for if that market softens. I don't want to have 50 people that I hire during this tight market that I have to make some tough decisions with. Can we reduce that? So that's something that we're definitely seeing out there.
Yeah, I think that kind of makes sense. To touch on what you said, to brokers hiring 1 to 2 reps a week, when you start to have some of those some of the surge in imports that we're seeing, in July, according to the data, U.S. import data, we had a 26-month high in terms of container imports. It makes a lot of sense that the hiring is starting to ramp up, especially with the potential brace of the port strikes and things like that, which could really put a pretty massive crunch on overall capacity. Because if a lot of this has to shift to moving by truck, it's going to be pretty catastrophic for the trucking side. It'll be good for trucking. It'll be bad in terms of rates and things like that. Rates will probably shoot up 5 to 25% in some way. It's 30%, 50% overnight because capacity is going to get so tight. So to kind of build on that, I think that makes sense. But also, like you said, it's tough when you start to notice those trends, or the market doesn't actually maybe shift as much as you thought. And then maybe in 6 months, you have to make some tough decisions as to, hey, should we be keeping these people on that we brought on in anticipation of a market shift, and we're just not really seeing it.
Yeah, and could it be that this shift is temporarily brought on by something much like a hurricane, right, will temporarily make capacity super tight in Florida or whatever. But there could be those, I guess, exogenous impactful events like port strikes and things like that. I remember a couple of years ago when the rail strike was happening, it ended up not being, if I remember correctly, it ended up not having such a huge impact on rates, but it was more the speculation around what was going to happen because of it that was kind of creating some craziness. There's also a lot of speculation on the election coming up this year. It's like that's huge, and everybody's trying to make the right moves now, but also kind of holding tight. Seeing how that goes. So, that should settle things maybe.
No, you're spot on though. Companies are kind of holding off on making some of their decisions in terms of, what they're going to be doing for the next 6 months to a year. Tesla put a pause on their Gigafactory in Mexico. I've seen a couple other companies have put pauses on some of their building in Mexico. So, that's spot on. There's a lot of things that are going to impact, the freight markets over the next 6 months to a year, which kind of leads me into something interesting because I want to ask you, what should brokers kind of be focusing on in this kind of in between market between, as we kind of gear up for Q1 and next year's RFP season? Should brokers be kind of focusing on trying to be that number one position in their shippers routing guides, or should they try to focus on more of that spot freight, knowing that the market could inevitably shift in the next few months?
Gosh, I don't want to pretend to know the answer to that question, but I think just the natural. If you think spot rates are going to start growing faster than the contract rates, go focus on spot, and if you think that they're not, go focus on getting more contracts. What do I think is going to happen? I have no freaking idea. So yeah, I think just making sure. I think that operational efficiency is an evergreen area of focus. I think every smart company is going to go look at what are their costs, what are the assets and liabilities, what does my top and bottom line look like, and constantly trying to improve that, because you don't know what's about to happen. And I also think that if we see a tight market, I think in the craziness of 2021 and 22, which, gosh, what a time to sell capacity management solutions.
Right.
Brilliant. Amazing. So back in those times, brokers were making a nice little pile of cash and saying, I'm going to sock this away because I know times aren't always going to be so nice. I think everybody should do that too. Because it goes up and down, and you want to make sure that you're planning ahead. So I think operational efficiency is absolutely huge, whether it's a tight market, soft market, whatever it is. And that means sometimes it means training, sometimes it means looking at your processes, sometimes it means adding technology. It really just depends.
I want to dive into a little bit of marketing, because that's kind of what you're doing now. Nothing too crazy, but how critical is it right now for brokers and carriers, to be focused a little bit more on marketing, even if they are kind of a smaller 2, 3, 5 person team, with so much competition in the market. We touched on it earlier. Brokers can tend to get, 10, 20, 30 emails, 50 calls on a load. So how can both brokers from a shipper standpoint and carriers from a broker standpoint, maybe stand out with some of their marketing to outstage their competition, I guess?
Yeah, I think that something that I'm discovering about marketing as I get into it, because my background is in sales,
right,
but I've always been kind of on social and stuff, and that's really why we're talking, right? Exactly. So I think that what I've found since I've gotten kind of into marketing as my full-time gig is that it's never been easier to create valuable content for your potential customers. And outbound, I'm learning, and this is like marketing 101, but I'm in marketing 101. So there we go. There's like outbound marketing and inbound marketing. And I think that if you're a carrier, if you're a broker, if you're focusing on inbound marketing where you're providing valuable content for your potential customers, they are going to just see your name around more places. Yeah. And it's a pretty low lift. I think that's actually a really good use of AI. There's some really fantastic AI marketing tools that can generate content for you that is actually decent. Yeah. And that's an art. There's an art and science of using AI to generate marketing content. But I think that it's just, it's not that you have to spend all day doing it, but doing some is a lot better than doing none. I think at this point, because so many folks are on X/Twitter, whatever we're calling it now, so many people are on LinkedIn, just spending an hour at the beginning of the week creating your content, putting it out there, pushing it out there, you're going to just be seen out there. And I've talked to brokers, even very small brokerage agents, where it's just like one guy, friends of ours, right, who they're just out on LinkedIn making a splash, and their names are known, and they get inbounds. They get inbound leads just from being out in the ether. So I think that a little goes a long way. Don't need to do too much, but your silence will be heard louder than your whatever the saying is. Like, your absence is felt more than your presence, maybe.
No, I agree. So I completely agree with that because, there's so much going on in the world of freight. There's so many carriers, there's so many brokers, and you really have to try to find ways to stand out. And, like you said, you could spend, if you're a carrier out there, you could spend, 20 minutes a day just recording yourself as you're driving or as you're doing your pre-trip inspection or as you're doing loading and unloading or as you're walking into the facility. People really like that kind of content. I myself, I die for that kind of content. I look on Instagram.
Yeah.
Listen, I get sucked into so many truck driving video rabbit holes of guys just literally walking to the Love's shower and then making their dinner in their sleeper. Like that stuff is interesting to people, to brokers, and if you're getting that stuff out there and you're showing, hey, like I'm actually doing my pre-trip. Hey, I keep my truck in good condition. Hey, I personally am like keeping myself in good shape and I eat out and I'm doing, I'm eating healthy. I'm doing these kind of things. And someone shares that kind of content and it makes their way to a shipper, makes their way to a broker. And if I was still brokering freight, I would reach out to these guys before I'm posting my spot freight. I would be like, hey, if you're available, like let's connect because, they have that presence and, they're not going to want to screw up any of their online presence and who they are and who they are over a load or a few $1,000s. So there's always kind of that give and take too, where you can really, make sure that you guys have a really good, healthy relationship and you guys can work together on posting, content for both the brokerage side and for the carrier side. And same thing with brokers. Just set your phone down and make content while you're making phone calls or while you're answering. There's so much different content you can make. So not to cut you off, Jesse, but there's just so many different ways you could build content.
I feel like that can just humanize you so much.
Yes.
Where you're a broker, just like if your carriers see what it's like for you to go out there and rip some dials, I feel like that can create some empathy. Not that there's a lack of empathy from carriers to brokers. I want to be careful here because it's not really my arena, but I think that just a general like trust and understanding have always been lacking in this industry, I think. And it's a very much like where's the market right now? It's a tit for tat game where it's like you treated me like garbage in the tight market, now I'm going to treat you like garbage in the soft market. It's so toxic and terrible. Maybe just like we have these tools and platforms to come off as a human. And the same with evaluating a carrier. It's like, okay, we've gotten the fraud thing is obviously not solved, but there are some amazing tech solutions to prevent fraud. And so if you set your standards high enough, that solves for the most part the problem of, is this carrier fraudulent?
Right.
But then you get to the next level. It's like, I don't want just non-fraudulent carriers. That's not my level of service that I want. That's not my standard. I want that should be table stakes. It's like, I want to work with a carrier that's not only not fraudulent, but is good, is a good person. Like they're hard working. They're going to be communicative. They're going to be a good business partner. And I want to continuously reuse that carrier and make sure to feed that carrier the right stuff. That starts with a lot of the time. I feel like carriers, maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I feel like if carriers just put like a picture in their email signature, that could go a long way for a broker or a shipper to see like, all right, this guy, maybe it's got a link to their go crazy, a link to your X account, something like that. So, listen, got ideas. I don't know how well it would work, but
I think that's great. And I think that's something that, I learned as a freight broker and I took into freight tech before starting ThinkFreight was sending videos. Like, hey, if you're going to send an email to a broker and you're an owner op or you're a small fleet owner who's, doing freight themselves, send a video instead. Say, hey, I'm XYZ here's my truck. I'm empty. I'm ready to roll. If I got a video like that from a carrier and I'm like, shit, I'm going to go with this guy. I can actually see his truck, his MC number. I can see he's a real person. And then that way you can really start building trust that way. I think that, in 2024, we have so many tools at our disposal, but we're not willing to kind of use them or go kind of that extra mile to kind of, take those tools and utilize them to kind of the best of our abilities. I mean, we have them every single phone has a camera now. You can easily send that text message or that email as a video. It takes just as long, 15 more seconds to send that as a video than it does to send it as a text. So I think there's a lot of cool ways that yeah, the carriers can get involved and help, help themselves win more freight.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's spot on. Like everybody has a smartphone now. You can make a quick video, you can say hello, and I think that with those good relationships, you start being able to. I think the bar is fairly low on carrier sales. Like I think it's low. Like you can just cover freight. Cool,
Right.
You posted that load and you cover it with a first carrier that called in that's not fraudulent. What, you want a cookie? That's table stakes. It's like, how do I make sure that I'm as a carrier rep going and fostering the relationships and moving carriers through that carrier sales funnel from that first email communication. And if there's some more human touch in those first email communications or after that first load, if you're connecting with those people, and it's just like a little bit of marketing, it's a little bit of human to human marketing. It doesn't have to be super polished. Yeah. I think that's a great way to go about it. But then it's up to the broker what they do with that, right? It's like, all right, do I treat this carrier like just like anybody else, or is it, this could be something that I could repeatedly move business with and not spend so much time doing it.
Jesse, as we prepare for the end of the show here, I want to ask you kind of what excites you the most going into Q4 here and for next year, both at Parade, but as kind of the broader industry changes. What are you most excited about?
Yeah, I'm most excited about for me right now, there's conference season coming up. So I'm personally really excited about going to the Trimble Insights Conference, the McLeod User Conference, the Descartes Algex one, and TIA Technovations. I'm stoked to be out there and just shaking people's hands and saying hello. Just the upcoming opportunities that there are going to be to connect with other people in the industry. I'm stoked about that. I'm really excited about kind of our key initiative right now at Parade, which is bringing together, all of these. We have so many different solutions for different parts of the process of covering a load, and we're excited to be bringing those into one solution, and helping brokerages to bring carriers from the top of the funnel, that first email, like let's get right to the meaningful emails, all the way till that carrier that I run the same lane with every week is not even doing anything to take my load. And there's so many steps in between, and we're really excited to be reintegrating that into one platform. So that's a really key initiative. Finally, the third thing is, you asked about industry. Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens. Hopefully it's good. And nobody knows for sure. If we all knew for sure, we'd all be billionaires on Wall Street, because we'd be able to time the market and all that stuff. But nobody does. So I'm looking forward to having the relief, hopefully, of a tightening market. I think the seasonality can take care of part of that, and then hopefully just ride out into a nice sustainable growth in rates. That'll be good for everybody in our industry.
Jesse, thanks for coming back on the show, man. It was a lot of fun chopping it up with you, talking about freight and what you guys are doing at Parade. If the audience wants to get in touch, they want to learn a little bit more about you, about Parade, what you guys are doing, or they're going to be at one of the freight conferences you guys are going to be at and want to hang out with you, how can they find you online and get in touch with you guys?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. J-Taylor is my LinkedIn. You can just search. I'm probably in there somewhere. Shoot me an email also, jesse@parade.ai. Would love to say hello. And yeah, I always love just chatting about industry stuff, whether it's about Parade or whatever that is. I think it's better. More connections is better than fewer in our tight industry. So appreciate it.
No, of course, man. Make sure you guys check out Jesse and Parade. All of their links will be down in the comments or in our podcast description. If you guys like today's show, make sure you give it a 5-star review or a thumbs up, depending on the platform you're watching on. And don't forget, we do drop 3 weekly freight newsletters, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, thinkfreight.io. We'll catch you guys in the next episode, and don't forget to think freight.